Get everything situated here. Now, normally we would have junior church at this time, but since Shannon's sick, I don't think we have it, unless someone was just going to take it, but I don't think we made, what's that? Is that better? Oh. Okay. Yeah, if you take the high thing and just turn it down like I showed you on the other one, it might help. I don't know. Okay. We are in the book of Daniel, and we've been studying this now for this is the second week. So we are in Daniel chapter 2, and glad you could all be here with us. It's great to have family in visiting and all of that. We are in Daniel chapter 2, and I've titled this, A Dream of the Future, because it's about a dream Nebuchadnezzar had about the future. So if you will join me in Daniel chapter 2, we'll go ahead and go through the whole chapter. In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and its interpretation. They answered a second time and said, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see that the word from me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. For no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Because of this, the king was angry and very furious, and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He declared to Arioch, the king's captain, Why is the decree of the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel, and Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we have asked you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went into Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, No wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed came thoughts of what will be after this, and he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, that you may know the thoughts of your mind. You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image mighty and of exceeding brightness stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, and its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on the feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron and the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken in pieces, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power and the might and the glory, in whose hand he has given wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay, partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom, but some of the firmness of iron shall be in it. As you saw iron mixed with the soft clay, and as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever, just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. A great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and paid homage to Daniel, and commanded that an offering and incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, Truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings, and revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king gave Daniel high honors and made great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained in the king's court. So here we have the story of Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar, where Nebuchadnezzar had a frightening dream that could have wiped out all the wise men, would have wiped out the Hebrews who were there as well, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that they were classed as part of the wise men. And because he had this dream and his wise men could not interpret it, Nebuchadnezzar was just going to be done with them. But first, we come to a frightening dream, verses 1 through 16. And this was in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. And the way the Babylonians counted it, you had the Ascension year, then year 1, then year 2. And so this would have been just after Daniel and his friends came out of the school that they were in before entering the service of the king. So Daniel would have been very young at this time, maybe still an older teenager or young in his 20s. And so still a very young man, recently, just in the past few years, brought out of his home, educated in the Babylonian schools, and here he was. But the king had a dream, and it troubled him so much his sleep left him. he saw this statue and the rock destroyed it. So he didn't know, did this dream mean he was going to be overthrown? What did this mean? What would it mean? And it troubled him so much that he called in all of the wise men, all of the advisors, that they would come in and try and interpret this dream. But you wonder if Nebuchadnezzar maybe was suspicious of them and thought maybe they were liars who just made things up in order to try and appease the king. They might have been left over from his father. He was much younger than them. Maybe he didn't trust them. And so he devised a test for them, that they would have had books that they could have went, and if he told them a dream, they could have looked it up. Oh, statue, let's turn the S's. Oh, okay, statue, and it was made out of gold, silver. Okay, what do those mean? And they could have come up with an interpretation. But to try and really show, could they really be in connection with the gods? Could they really know this? He said, well, I'm not even going to tell you the dream. You tell me the dream. And if you can't tell me the dream, then you will be torn limb from limb and your house reduced to a pile of rubble. And so it was not an idle threat either. Even as we'll see next week with the fiery furnace and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as they are thrown into the furnace, that Nebuchadnezzar didn't make idle threats. And, this wasn't a constitutional republic. There was nothing that could keep the king from doing whatever he wanted. And so they knew if he made this threat, he could make good on it. And he said, I will know for certainty that you really can do what you say you can do if you can tell me the dream. But if not, well, it's going to be bad for you. And so they couldn't do it, and so the king said, all right, I'll have all of you executed. And Arioch was there trying to assemble them all. Might have been a public execution. And then he went to get Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these four weren't there before the king, because Daniel, of course, someone comes knocking on your door and, oh yeah, we need to bring you here because the king's going to execute you. You probably want to know why. Oh, wait, I haven't done anything. What's going on? And so he asked Arioch, well, why is this so urgent? Why is the king going to do this? Why does he want to kill us? And, well, Arioch told him. And so then Daniel said, well, bring me before the king. Let's make a request for more time, and I will bring him the interpretation. Daniel had faith that his God could do this. And so Nebuchadnezzar granted the time, and they were given that he would show the king the interpretation. So what can we see from this? Well, first of all, paganism is a fraud. That these pagan astrologers, these pagan advisors, all their pagan arts couldn't show them the answer. Just like we saw with Joseph in Egypt when he was brought down there, or not Joseph, when Moses was leading the children of Israel out. They were able to do a few of the things that Moses did, but then there came a point where they said, we can't do this. This is the finger of God. We can't reproduce this. That paganism is a fraud. It's not going to bring you closer to God. Going to the newspaper horoscope section to see your fortune, it's not going to teach you anything. It's not going to bring you the truth that paganism is a fraud. So what should we do? Well, trust God with your future. Instead of looking towards those different arts of palm reading, tarot cards, horoscopes, looking at the stars or whatever, trust God with your future. He knows what he's doing. He's got it planned out, and we can trust him. So what should we do then if faced with such dire circumstances? Well, Daniel and his friends, they had a good response. They went to prayer. And we see there in verses 17 to 23. Daniel then went to his house. He told Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, said, let's go pray together. Let's seek mercy from God. And so they did. And they prayed that they wouldn't be destroyed with the rest of the wise men. But then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. So Daniel was given a vision of this is the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. This is the interpretation. So God revealed this to Daniel. God revealed to him what it was. And then Daniel blessed the God of heaven, and he prayed. He said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might." That even though Daniel was a wise man, even though he had great learning, he was educated in all of the knowledge of the Babylonians. But yet, where did true wisdom come? Where did true knowledge come from? It came from God. So Daniel was revealed this by God. It says he changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. And so here is Daniel, who was exiled from his land, that the Babylonians came and took him. He had seen defeat. And at this time yet, I don't think in Nebuchadnezzar's second year that they had gone in and totally destroyed Jerusalem. There were some waves of exiles. Daniel was one of the first waves when the king, surrendered and said, okay, we don't want to fight, we don't want war. And so he was brought under tribute. They brought some of the nobility back to Babylon. Daniel was one of them. But of course, it's saying, well, wait, we saw in our scriptures that, under Moses, they were able to defeat these other nations. Under Joshua, they took the land. Under David, they defeated the Philistines and all of this. And even under Hezekiah, the Assyrians came up to Jerusalem and they were defeated. So what happened? Why did we give in to Babylon? Well, it was because of their sin. It was because of their idolatry. But it would have been very easy for them to be in Babylon and think, well, so much for our God. He couldn't, he wasn't able to rescue us. But that is not what they did. Instead, they prayed to the God of heaven, and they realized, Daniel said, you're the one that sets up kings and brings down kings. You're the one that controls all of this. You are in control of history and the future. That God is the one in control. And so Daniel had faith in God, not his own abilities. Our own abilities will come up short. If we trust in ourselves, eventually we're going to fail ourselves. If we trust in man, eventually that man's going to fail us. If we put our faith in politics, well, sometimes our team may win and other times our team will lose. And we think, oh no, the world's going to end because the other political party got in the office. Oh no, what's going to happen? Well, don't put your trust in politics. Don't put your trust in kings. Trust in God, who is in control. He sets up kings, he opposes kings. Or in our context, he sets up presidents and senators and representatives and governors, and he also takes them down. God is in control, and he knows what he's doing. And also, when faced with disaster, get on your knees. Pray to God. Go to him in prayer. When you're faced with disaster, go to God in prayer. That's what we see Daniel and his friends doing. So when you're faced with that disaster, go to God in prayer. So then, Daniel goes before Nebuchadnezzar, and he gives the dream and its interpretation. And so Daniel then went into Arioch, who the king is appointed, and said, okay, don't destroy him. Don't start lopping off limbs like Nebuchadnezzar said you were going to do. Just wait a second. I have the interpretation. Bring me before the king. And so Arioch, of course, maybe wanted in on some of the goodwill of the king. He says, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. So, hey king, yeah, I found him. I helped avert this. He wanted in on some of the king's goodwill. And so then the king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? So Daniel said, well, actually, no. No astrologer, no magician, no enchanter is able to do this. It's not me. It's not my ability. It's not that I am special. It's that there is a God in heaven. There is a God in heaven who can do this. And he told me. So Daniel wasn't saying he was special. He was saying his God is special. He was saying, it is my God that revealed this to me. So before, when the advisors told Nebuchadnezzar, only a God can do that, and they're up in heaven. What can they help us with here? They're not going to do that. Well, here Daniel says, no, there is a God in heaven, and he has told me. He has told me what's going on, or what is to happen. And it said that the king had lay in his bed and he was thinking about the future. Of course, he had just seen his empire was expanding, that his father began this Neo-Babylonian empire, and then it was expanding under Nebuchadnezzar, and he evidently was very good at what he did. He was a good king in administering this big empire and conquering other peoples. And so he was thinking about that and said, to you, O king, came thoughts of what would be after this, and he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be known to you, O king. And so Daniel then tells him, this is what you saw. You saw a huge statue that was gleaming in the light. So the metal was reflecting the sunlight, and it was huge and gleaming and so big it terrified the king, that he was dismayed at seeing it. He said it had a head of gold, the chest and arms were of silver, the belly and thighs were of brass, and then the legs were of iron, and the feet were iron mixed with clay. And then you saw a rock that was cut out without human hands, and then came against the feet, destroyed the feet, and then as it fell, everything else was destroyed and blew away like chaff. And chaff is that part of the grain that they would go out and thresh it, and then take a winnowing fork and throw it in the air on a windy day so to blow away all the worthless chaff, and then be left with the grain. Today we see that big cloud out behind a combine as it's threshing inside. And just like the wind blows away that cloud, so it blew away what remained of the statue. And so that is what Nebuchadnezzar saw. And then Daniel said, well, and here is the interpretation. He said, you are the head of gold. So that head of gold represented Babylon, and these all represent kingdoms. And so the head was of gold. And of course, gold is a precious metal. Gold is something that is worth a lot of money. It was sought out by kings. I'm sure Nebuchadnezzar had a lot of it. And that he was that head of gold. He said, well, after you, the silver represents another kingdom that's inferior to you, and then the bronze, another kingdom. Well, that would be the Medo-Persian Empire. And then after that would be Greece under Alexander the Great. And of course, he died. His generals split up his kingdom into 4 different kingdoms, and they were divided and warred with each other. Finally, the legs of iron were Rome. And he spent a lot of time on Rome and how iron will shatter in pieces. Iron is a strong metal. And, in battles of those days, you would want a sword made out of iron instead of, a sword made out of some other metal, because that iron was hard. It would hold an edge. It wouldn't break or bend easy on the battlefield. And just as iron would crush, so this kingdom would do the same. And we know Rome took over a huge portion of the world at that time, that they called the Mediterranean Sea the Roman Lake, because they owned all around it, that they conquered far and wide. And then he said he saw the feet and toes. They were partly clay and partly iron. Now, I'm not much of a metal worker, but I'm sure if you mix in clay with your iron when you're trying to make something, it probably doesn't help much. You try and make an alloy of clay and iron, and those don't go together. So it made it weak. And the feet were weak. And even the 10 toes represented like a federation of kings instead of one central ruler. And we'll see later in Daniel's visions, it talks about 10 horns on an animal that represent those rulers, and then the little horn comes up and supplants 3 of them, but we'll get into that later. And that this kingdom then would be crushed by the rock that is cut out without human hands. So these other kingdoms were all human kingdoms, but the kingdom that comes and replaces them it's not of human origin. It's the kingdom of God. That is Jesus coming and ruling. That is his kingdom that is coming, and he will crush all other human kingdoms. He will bring them to nothing. Just like the statue blew away like chaff and wasn't found, so he will defeat all human kingdoms when he comes again. So evidently, and there's some different interpretations here depending on how you view the end times, that there will be something like Rome come about again with a federation of kings that is weak, that Christ will crush when he comes. And that the Antichrist will be one of those kings that will then come up and rule over the other kings, and then Christ will come and defeat him. If you're amillennial, which looks at the millennium as symbolic, and we're in it now, the church age is the millennium, you would say, well, that's when Christ came the first time and died on the cross. That was the start of his kingdom, and then his kingdom is now the church, ruling and reigning over the world. If you are post-millennial, that you are looking at Christ will come back after Christians kind of take over the world, and we see a golden age, then Christ will come back. So you'd say, well, that mountain's still growing, because that rock then became a great mountain that took over the whole world. But then I am premillennial and believe, well, that's still coming. Amen. Christ will come. So there's some differences on if you're reading a commentary, you might see some different things there. So that Christ will come. I believe this is future, and that he will come, destroy the earthly kingdoms, and he will rule. And so as we go about this, then, we can see a few truths. First of all, Jesus is coming again to rule over the world. That's our great hope. We're waiting for Christ to come back. We're waiting for him to come and rule. And that is our hope. He is coming again. Now, it's a great hope if you're a believer in Jesus Christ. If you are not a believer, this should scare you. If you are not a believer in Jesus Christ when he comes back, that won't be a good thing for you. That Christ will come and judge, but he is coming again to rule over the earth. So how can you know? How can you be certain that you're on the right side of that? Well, it's to know one thing. First of all, you're a sinner. You have broken God's law. You deserve God's wrath. All of us do. I do too. I'm not trying to get on my high horse here and say, well, you all are sinners, but I'm pretty good now. I deserve an eternity in hell just as much as the next one. But God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. That Jesus came and he lived among us, and he fulfilled God's law perfectly. In fact, he is God in human flesh. He is God. He fulfilled God's law perfectly, and then he went and died upon the cross to pay the penalty for our sin. That his death took the penalty we deserved. That God is a righteous judge. He couldn't just look over sin. That sin needed to be atoned for. It needed to be paid for. And Jesus did that upon the cross, that all who believe in him, their sin is forgiven. If they will believe in who he is, that he is who he said he is, that he is Lord, that he died upon the cross for your sin, that he rose again on the third day, the Bible says you will be saved. You will be forgiven. And you will have a home in heaven. And you can look forward to Jesus coming back as your blessed hope, as he comes to get his church. But also, as we are in the midst of political turmoil right now, God is in control even of kingdoms and empires. Trust him. We look at things, sometimes we'll get good news, and we think, oh, hey, we're seeing some good things. Kind of like, the first meeting between President Trump and the president of North Korea. You think, hey, we're actually seeing some movement. And then the second time they met, not so much, and they're already building the missile complex again. You think, well, boy, what does this mean? Well, trust God. God is in control even of those kingdoms that we look at and we think, what can we do about this? God is in control. We have an election coming up. Don't wrap your future into that election because you're trusting in politicians. Trust God. God is in control. So trust Him because He is in control even of kingdoms and empires. And then finally we come to reward. That the king fell upon his face. He paid homage to Daniel, commanded that an offering and incense be offered up to him. But then the king's words clarify what's going on here. Because you're thinking, whoa, you think Daniel said like, oh, no, I'm not God, no, don't worship me. But this was done as Daniel is God's representative. Because Nebuchadnezzar says, truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries. For you have been able to reveal this mystery. So the king gave Daniel high honors, and gave him gifts, and put him in charge of the province of Babylon, and that he would be in charge of all the wise men. And then Daniel asked, well, can you take my 3 friends and put them in charge over the province of Babylon? And then Daniel stayed in the king's court. And that this was granted to him. But evidently, as we'll see from the next chapter, Nebuchadnezzar didn't become a worshiper of God exclusively. He just added Daniel's God to the other gods he worshipped and said, wow, he's a really good God. Because we see him next wanting to put to death anyone who wouldn't worship the image he set up. That he just thought, well, God is like any other God. I'll just add him to my group of gods that I worship. He hadn't come to see God as the only God yet. So we see here that God intervened to save Daniel. That it wasn't Nebuchadnezzar in control. It wasn't circumstances in control. God is in control. And we can also trust God even to deliver you from sin. Just like we talked about before. That you may think, oh, I'm lost. There's no way God can ever love me. How can I ever stand before God? Well, because Christ died. He showed His love upon the cross. And if you will believe, God will deliver you from your sin. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word you have given us. Thank you for your faithfulness to your servants. Even when they were being punished for the sins of Israel, that they had been exiled to Babylon, you were still faithful. You still showed love to them. And that you are in control. Father, I pray that we would be encouraged knowing that you are in control of politics even today. And that even though we can't figure it out, we know you're in control. And Father, I pray we wouldn't put our trust in politicians, but our trust in you. And it is in the name of your Son, Jesus, that we pray. Amen.